This question comes to us from Rob Gamer. He submitted it on the AskProfWolff section of our website, rdwolff.com. And here's his question. Were there economic systems other than capitalism that were being considered by people when feudalism died? In other words, when we talk about the transition from feudalism that existed from 500 to 1500 AD in Europe and then passed into capitalism, did it have to go that way? Were there other ways that the economic history of the Western world could have played out? Well, the answer is an enthusiastic and unqualified yes. There was nothing necessary or inevitable about capitalism. This notion of inevitability is one to be very skeptical about. First, let me explain that at the end of feudalism, there was a much more widespread economic system than capitalism. And if you were a betting person toward the end of feudalism in Europe, you would have bet on this other system as being the one of the future, not capitalism. I'm talking about what we nowadays call self-employment. In other words, you stop being a serf, stopped having a lord over you. You became a small farmer, a small peasant, a small self-employed rural worker. And if you didn't become a farmer per se, you became a craftsperson, someone who made clothing, or someone who baked bread, or someone who made furniture as an individual. So in other words, the economic system coming out of feudalism in most European countries was self-employment. Marx called it the ancient class structure, because in ancient Rome, you had a long period of time when that was the typical economic system. Individual Roman families cultivating their own land or doing their own craft work in the towns, etc. So we could have had an economic system. In fact, England had this for quite a while. It was called the yeoman farmer system of England because it was an economic system comprised of lots of individuals working for themselves, no employees, therefore it's not capitalism, nobody hiring other people. John Locke wrote his great theories about what a democratic society should look like on the assumption that everybody was self-employed and that you'd have a society sort of like the New England town meeting has been understood to be in American history. Thomas Jefferson loved this image. He wanted the United States to be that kind of a society of self-employed farmers and craftspeople and store owners. He was very suspicious of a small number of employers and a mass of employees in the way that capitalism developed. So yes, there's no necessity that capitalism was the next step. And if you're wondering, could we have skipped over capitalism and moved directly to a socialistic arrangement? The answer is yes, we could have, because that did happen in a variety of places. But in the struggle among the self-employed and the socialists and the capitalists won, which is why we've had the last 300 years looking the way they do.